I made a post about a cancellation we had due to the way I looked. Just also expressed my frustration over the years of getting calls of cancellations because of people saying that I couldn't be Christian.
A youth pastor cancels a Christian concert, not because the artist was preaching heresy, not because she was promoting sin, but because of the way she looked. Dark clothes, heavy music, an image that didn't fit the Sunday morning aesthetic. And most pastors who do something like that, they never say another word about it. But this one did something different. He called back. Welcome back to Anointed TV. Today we're talking about a story that has been moving fast this week. A story about a Christian metalcore artist named Magdalene Rose, a wave of church cancellations, and one pastor who had the humility to pick up the phone and say, "I was wrong." First, some context. Who is Magdalene Rose? Her full name is Magdalene Rose Rojas, or she is the daughter-in-law of Joseph Rojas, the frontman of Christian rock band Seventh Day Slumber, and she's married to Blaze Rojas, the band's drummer. She released her debut EP The Prelude in November 2023. But here's what makes her story particularly compelling. This is not an artist who stumbled into ministry. According to her bio, she uses her personal story to speak to people, men, women, boys, and girls, who are struggling with depression, self-worth, body image, and self-harm. She points them toward the love of God and a future of healing. She even got a master's degree in crisis counseling. This is a woman who cares so deeply about the vulnerable people coming to her concerts that she went back to school to be better equipped to help them. And yet, the churches were canceling her shows. Earlier this month, April 9th, Magdalene Rose posted a statement on social media that set the internet on fire. She was on the road opening for Seventh Day Slumber on their Y2K Reloaded tour, when she and her husband Blaze got back on the bus after their anniversary trip and received some difficult news. I'm going to read her words directly because they deserve to be heard in full. I don't make many posts like this because I try my best to focus on the good things that are happening in my life, but it's gotten to the point where I need to say something. When Blaze and I got on the bus last night after flying home from our anniversary trip, we found out that several churches have called and either asked for me to not to be on their shows, or they've completely canceled the show strictly based on the way I look and the music I play. The show on May 17th in Granbury, Texas has canceled the entire show, and I can only hope the Y2K Reloaded tour doesn't get canceled because of me. She wasn't done. I thought we were past this, guys, but recently it feels like there's been more calls coming in from promoters because their churches want me off the shows, or they just completely cancel the shows because of the way I dress or the way my music sounds. Not one has offered to speak with me or tried to understand why I create music the way I do. But Magdalene wasn't finished. She went deeper. And this is where it gets raw. I'm going to read this section carefully because it's important. Christians have called me a Satanist, a witch, called me names that no woman should ever be called. I've been told that I'm leading people to hell and that I'll be walking in right alongside them. This isn't anything new, though. I've been hearing stuff like this since I was a young teenager and had grown men asking me what message I was trying to convey with my clothing. And then she says something that ought to land hard in every church building in the country. You people act like you have some sort of moral high ground over me, and you're too arrogant to realize you're part of the reason I hated church for so long. I was terrified to step foot in a church because of religious judgment, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. There it is. The woman ministering to teenagers on the edge, young people sending her messages from the middle of self-harm crises, once was one of those teenagers. She was afraid to enter a church because of people who looked at her clothes and decided she didn't belong. And instead of the church reckoning with that history, some of them were busy repeating it. This is not ancient history. This is happening now, on the road, in 2025. She then makes what I consider to be the most theologically pointed part of her statement. She writes, "You don't get messages from people in the middle of self-harm asking if I can pray for them to have the strength to stop. You haven't had to hold someone while they were sobbing because tonight was the first time they realized God could love them despite the ridicule and abuse they've endured. You may be the only glimpse of Jesus that people get in this life, and you need to wake up because while you're so focused on black lipstick, there are people committing suicide, there are people struggling with their mental health, there are people struggling with their faith in God, and you're not even willing to give them a second of your time." And on the criticism of her clothing being dark, I already know there's going to be upset church people reading this because I still should refrain from the look of darkness or whatever you always comment on my posts. You need to work on understanding the Bible better because the verse you're referencing means appearances of evil And last time I checked, a color can't be evil. In fact, the color black absorbs all light, and I can only hope to be so Jesus-filled that I absorb his light and can then share his love with others. That's a sharp hermeneutical point. And she's right. The passage in 1 Thessalonians 5:22 about abstaining from every appearance of evil, or more accurately in modern translations, every form of evil, is not a dress code, or it's a call to avoid actual moral evil. Using it to gatekeep concert lineups based on aesthetic preferences is not faithful Bible interpretation. It's a preference masquerading as theology. And the image she closes with, the color black absorbs all light, and I can only hope to absorb his light. That's not just a clever comeback. That's a theology of incarnational presence. She's describing exactly what the church is supposed to be doing in dark places. It's worth noting that Joseph Rojas, her father-in-law, the frontman of the headlining band, publicly backed her. He said, and I'm quoting, "This breaks our hearts. Not only is Magdalene Rose someone Lori and I have known since she was a little girl, but she is also our daughter-in-law. I've dealt with this for many years. But it's different when it's your kids." That phrase, "I've dealt with this for many years," is telling. This is not a new problem in Christian music circles. Artists who don't look like a worship team at a megachurch have faced this kind of gatekeeping for decades. What's different now is that someone said it plainly, in public, and people listened. And now, the update that brought me to this story today. Days after her original post went viral, Magdalene Rose shared a video update on social media. I want you to hear this in her own words. Here is what she said.
I have a really, really cool update. It's cooler than the news articles, cooler than the numbers, cooler than whatever has been going on throughout this whole process. If you've been keeping up, I made a post about a cancellation we had due to the way I looked. Just also expressed my frustration over the years of getting calls of cancellations because of people saying that I couldn't be Christian because of my clothes or the makeup that I wear or the music that I make. Normally, I don't get a chance to explain myself or any sort of communication from any of these churches. And it's really awesome because yesterday I got a message from the youth pastor that canceled the show. His wife sent me a screenshot of the message that he wanted to send. And it was a really heartfelt apology, explaining that he wished he would have done things differently and, acknowledging that there are people that are being reached through this music, and just hoping that I could forgive him. I just wanted to say how big of a deal that is. It's really easy to make a post and then for news outlets to share it and for people to get on and argue and just talk about the drama of it all, but a lot of times you don't really see a resolution. And I think, especially being a Christian, that's a really big part of these conversations. And that's what I hoped would happen when I shared that post online. It wasn't me trying to go viral or trying to church bash or trying to, bring attention to my page. I was hoping that people would see that and some sort of change happen. It's so awesome because you guys rallied around not just me, but my band. My husband's in the band, our best friends, Zach and Weston, are in the band. It's a whole family out here, and you've rallied around all of us and carried us through this season. Even if it seems short-lived, this stuff has been going on for a long time, and so I really appreciate all of you guys just rallying around us. Change happens when people speak out, and all of you have been sharing your stories. All of you have been offering encouragement. I think it's so awesome to see this happen in real time, and I think that's the first apology I've ever been offered when it comes to situations like this. So important to see that resolution can happen. We can discuss things despite our differences. Change is happening. I've received messages from people saying that they're willing to give church a shot again. It's the first time they're going to church in years, but if all of these people in the comments really do believe what they're saying, maybe they can belong in church too. And I've gotten messages from people on the opposite side of it, apologizing to me because they've realized the judgment that they have had in their hearts, or trying to change the way they view people. And I think that's so awesome to not just see change happen with one person, but to see the ripple effect of all of this. And what started out as something super frustrating, God has just moved completely. I hope this update encourages people. Things can be solved. Things can change. It all comes from just having a conversation, being willing to speak up. I thank you guys so much for being willing to speak up on my behalf.
I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to either pile on this pastor or to rush past what he did too quickly. So let me sit with both sides for a moment. On one hand, yes, the cancellation caused real harm. It potentially robbed young people in that community of an evening that might have changed their lives. It communicated to Magdalene Rose once again that she was not acceptable as she was. That is a failure, and it should be named as one. But on the other hand, this pastor did something that is genuinely rare. He sat with his decision, concluded that he was wrong, wrote a heartfelt apology, and sent it without being pressured to do so. He didn't wait for a lawsuit. He didn't do it for PR. He did it privately through his wife, to a woman he had wronged. That is the beginning of what repentance looks like. We should not be so cynical about the church that we refuse to recognize when someone within it actually does the hard thing. This pastor did the hard thing. The question now is, will others? The story of Magdalene Rose is not ultimately about dark clothes or heavy music. It is about who the church decides belongs, and who gets turned away at the door before anyone has bothered to ask their name or hear their story. There are young people in your city right now who look like Magdalene Rose, who dress like her, who listen to the music she plays, who carry the same weight she once carried as a teenager, terrified to walk into a church. The question is not whether your church likes their aesthetic. The question is whether your church will be the last place they ever look for God, because you made them feel like they didn't qualify. Magdalene Rose is reaching people. The numbers say so. The messages say so. The young people in tears at her concert say so. The only question left is whether the church will get out of her way long enough to let her keep doing it. If this story meant something to you, please share it, because there are pastors who need to see it, and there are artists on the road right now who need to know they're not alone.